A 2022 Multidimensional Poverty Index survey carried out by the National Bureau of Statistics has revealed that 133 million Nigerians, representing 63% of the population, are poor. AfriEye correspondent Georgina Ezenika has details of this report.
Since the launch of the Global Multidimensional Poverty Index in 2010, several countries, including Nigeria, have used it as a model to measure their own poverty index. In November 2020, at the height of the coronavirus pandemic, Nigeria began the process of conducting its Multidimensional Poverty Index survey, becoming the first African country to do so. Here, the final result of the survey is being launched. The Statistician General of the Federation highlights the indices used.
With the largest sample size of 56,610 households that we selected across 109 senatorial districts in 36 states and federal capital of the Federation. We in Nigeria added a fourth dimension to this global one, which we call work and shocks. This fourth dimension, as well as the indicator under it, such as food security, water reliability, underemployment, security shocks, and school life, they were added to reflect the current realities and priorities of Nigeria.
According to the survey, 86 million of the poor people in Nigeria, that is 65%, live in the north, while nearly 47 million of the poor, which represents 35%, live in the southern region of the country.
To ensure the sustainability of this new multidimensional way of addressing poverty, the MPI has been adopted as the key policy tool and measurement method, complementing income-based measurement for poverty within the medium-term National Development Plan 2021 to 2025.
Intervention should really be tailored to the deprivation profile of each state, if not lower, making them our interventions of support efficient and of higher impact. And then secondly, child poverty is an urgent priority. 2/3 of children are multidimensionally poor, according to the National MPI.
The MPI 2022 will certainly help government at all levels, as well as development partners that we are, to allocate funds to benefit all those in need and develop the necessary support services.
President Muhammadu Buhari, who unveiled the report, said as part of measures to reduce poverty level in the country, an executive bill to give a legal framework to the National Social Investment Program is to be sent to the National Assembly soon. The president, represented by his chief of staff, Ibrahim Gambari, says the MPI result will serve as both a measurement and a policy tool to monitor progress at achieving this goal.
The results are not ends by themselves, by no means, but they are really a call for action and a call for targeted action in many dimensions. This is a report that pinpoints the level of deprivations and its intensity that confronts our citizens, all of them. Beyond this, it also provides substantive evidence of the positive impact of the multi-sectoral interventions of the Buhari administration.
Stakeholders here say the MPI data should be regularly updated. If all measures recommended in the report are effectively implemented, the aim of alleviating poverty in the country may become a reality in the nearest future. Georgina Ezenika, AfriEye News.
All right, the United Nations World Population Prospect for 2022 places Nigeria as 6th most populous country in the world with 216 million and 4th most populous with a projected of 375 million by 2050. AfriEye's business correspondent, Oye Sunday, in this report investigates to see if this calls for merry or worry.
The last conducted census in Nigeria was in 2006. The population was put at 140.43 million people. In the past few years, the country's population is set to be over 200 million. The United Nations World Population Prospects for 2022 projects that there are 216 million people in Nigeria, making it home to 2.7% of the global population and 6th most populous nation in the world.
I don't think it's an accurate number, and I'm guessing that the real number is lower than 219 million. Whether it's 10 million lower or 30 million lower, I'm not sure. But whatever the number is, we're a big country. Whether we're going to be the 3rd largest population country, some people say, or not, I'm not sure. But I think the focus of the government should be, one, is making sure that we continue to develop in the sense of education in particular, healthcare in particular, for women and children. And that's one of the major drivers for women to have less children. There's higher rates of children surviving, and then the people have less children. As they urbanize, they have less children. As they're more educated, they have less children. So those things the government should focus on.
While Nigeria maintains its bragging rights as the most populous nation on the African continent, could the rising number be a cause for worry?
We should be concerned about our population growth rate. Because what it does is that no matter how much you're growing, unless you're growing at 10, 12%, you're actually taking away from the living standards of our people.
A cross-section of Nigerians agree with the professor.
You cannot cater for yourself and giving birth to like 12, 15 children. Come is very bad. What do you want them to do? At times you just leave the children out the streets. It's not right.
I really think there should be a legislation to checkmate it. We can take a cue from China, which at a point they found out that they couldn't contain it. So they brought up legislations, incentives to make people not to have multiple children and multiple births. So I think that's the way to go.
The chief economist at PwC, however, disagrees. He believes that adopting China's one-child policy, which spanned between 1980 to 2016, is not only draconian, but counterproductive in the long run.
We don't need to go to that because we've seen so many other countries, India I've cited, Thailand, Brazil. If you simply have women in particular more educated, they're going to take more control of their reproductive futures. And of course, as the population gets wealthier, they realize it's important for the kids to be educated to be able to participate fully in the economy, which means that you have less children because you can't necessarily afford to put so many kids through school or support them in that way. So it's a natural process that's happened in many, many countries.
A few others say the number of children they have or plan to has little or no impact on Nigeria's economic woes.
No, I don't think to reduce population is a very good something because I'm the only child of my mother and she wished me to born plenty because she did not succeed to born plenty. I have to do that. If I have opportunity, I will born plenty because I will born 6.
But with headline inflation at 21.5%, food inflation at 23.7%, driven by disruption in the supply of food products, increase in the cost of importation due to persistent currency depreciation and high energy cost, Nigeria's rapidly growing population could be detrimental to its economic and social development. Checking Nigeria's growing population or not will make an interesting debate. But population and economic experts say one incontestable fact remains that a large population without requisite education or skills is a disaster in the making. The United Nations projects that world population could grow to 8.5 billion in 2030, 9.7 billion in 2050, and 10.4 billion in 2080. Now that tells us that as long as the natural right of humans to reproduce is uninterrupted, Nigeria and the world will continue to welcome new humans. Now how the government chooses to use this growing number to its advantage is a bigger issue unaddressed in Nigeria. However, what you choose to do with your natural right to reproduce is up to you and yours. Onyi Sunday, Arise News.
Well, we're a lot to chat about.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Let me look at it this way. I think the two subjects are related. In one breath, we're talking about poverty, the multidimensional poverty index released by the National Bureau of Statistics. And then the report by Onyi Sunday indicating that Nigeria's population has grown to about 216 million. In 20
in 2021, Nigeria's population growth was projected to be about 211.4 million. And now in 2022, we're 260 million. It's projected to be even much higher, to get to about 250 million by 2024, 2025. Now, and then poverty too is rising. According to the MBS report, as has been pointed out, poverty in the north is about 65%. In the south is 45%. In rural areas, it's 65%. In urban areas, it's about 35%. All those disaggregations notwithstanding, the truth of the matter is that we are all poor. If 133 million Nigerians out of either 211 million or 216 million as projected, are poor, then of course it means that we are all very poor in Nigeria. And then of course population is growing. That means the population of the poor will also continue to grow. And what that reminds me of, why I said the two are related, is Thomas Malthus, who wrote in 1798 an essay on the principle of population. Thomas Malthus' proposition was basically a mathematical proposition about population, where he was saying that while population grows geometrically, food resources will grow arithmetically. It was discredited by many persons who said it was projecting apocalypse. But again and again, either in Ireland or elsewhere, the Malthusian theory of population has been proven to be true. And so we're in a world now where, in fact, the agricultural projection stated by Malthus is not really the main issue. There are also other issues. Energy has been an issue. Oil and gas has been an issue. Electricity has been an issue. Human consumption has been an issue. Recently, the UNFPA indicated that the world's population has reached 8 billion mark. And so we keep increasing, but in terms of resources, the entire world has not been able, to meet its targets. So the question, therefore, will be, what do you do at the level of policy to deal with all of this? If poverty is so high in the rural areas, is so high in the northern part of the country, and 133 million people in Nigeria are poor. People who are poor, they are classified as people living on less than $1 a day. So what is government doing about it? The federal government of Nigeria says it has a national poverty reduction strategy. What effect has that national poverty reduction strategy has on the poverty index in Nigeria, which we are told is multidimensional? And the multidimensionality, as indicated by the National Bureau of Statistics, has to do with nutrition, has to do with access to healthcare, access to education, access to basic infrastructure, in other words, social protection. So all of these are factors that sanctifies our lives. So that report in itself is an indication of the failure of policy over the years, not by one government, but governments, successive governments. It's an indication at a higher level of leadership. And it is a call to action, as Professor Ibrahim Gambari, the Chief of Staff to the President of Nigeria, pointed out, a call to action in the sense that whoever is going to become President of Nigeria in 2023 will have to realize that apart from dealing with the challenge of insecurity, that poverty, walking on four legs, is one of those major problems that he has to deal with. So what is the policy projection? What are we going to do? For example, about water sanitation. Nigeria being one of those leading countries with regard to open defecation. School attendance is a problem. Food security is a problem. As the population continues to grow Malthusianly, geometrically, then of course the problem of poverty will continue to be compounded. And so what we are faced with is a situation that we cannot sweep under the carpet with rhetoric or with indifference or with the desperation of politicians, thinking that they can come talk to us with sugar-coated rhetoric and think that these issues are not out there in the front burner. I hope the various political parties will take these revelations by the National Bureau of Statistics with regard to poverty and with regard to inflation, which is now 21.09, and with regard to the crisis of revenue that Nigeria faces, to see how these problems can be dealt with.
So, there have been extensive books written about poverty. The one that comes to mind is Banerjee, the Indian Nobel laureate, and we know what poverty is when you read those insights. Poverty spans across everywhere. But there is no silver bullet to poverty other than good policies and politicians that don't weaponize poverty. The reason for Nigeria's poverty is that politicians have weaponized it for their own political interest. The day we stop the weaponization, the day poverty stops. Look at the numbers. Poverty spread across 133 million people and in a population of 216 million. Why are we not meeting development quotas? Because we've not invested in the people. A country that doesn't even have a census in a while, that's just going to do a census next year for over 13 years, how's it going to plan for its people? A country that has all the development indices stacked up against them. A country that's got over 20 million out-of-school children. Primary school completion rate is another thing. The number is going up to over 50% now. A lot of people don't complete primary school again. So the educational outcomes are bleak, nutritional outcomes are bleak, then definitely what you have is full-scale poverty. And I'm not surprised because President Muhammadu Buhari 2 years ago said he's got a roadmap to bring in 100 million people out of poverty. What we have done after that roadmap is to add more million people to poverty. And why? Because of massive corruption. You can hear about the Accountant General stealing a lot of money, looking for a plea bargain, and things like that. But you see, Darren Acemoglu wrote a book. He says why nations fail. Why nations fail? Because their leaders make them fail. Pure and simple. Why is Nigeria poor? Because its leaders over the years have made it poor by weaponizing poverty. The day we wake up and get leadership right, and that's why I say 2023 elections matter a great deal, then Nigeria will change. That's why you must go out there and vote your conscience. Also, Amartya Sen, another Nobel laureate, another well-respected writer, wrote a book and said something. He said, development as freedom. It's a good book. You could go get it and read it by Amartya Sen. It is only development that can bring true freedom in our society. Are we free in our Nigerian society today? Freedom has been hampered because there's no development and all the development parameters are low. Human Development Index, low. And I'm happy that this report was done by the National Bureau of Statistics so that people will not contest it and say, oh, it's some phony report from somewhere. This is the time to interrogate further and do something.